What's up, guys? I am Diz. This is Domino, and today we are getting in the mood for Halloween by looking up some serial killers. We're just gonna go ahead and leave off some big uns like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer because I feel like we've heard enough about them. So let's get into 11 different serial killers. Number 1, H.H. Holmes, the man with the murder castle. His real name was Herman Webster Mudgett. He was an insurance scammer before moving to Chicago, Illinois. In 1893, he built the murder castle. It was a 3-story inn that was more than met the eye. Some of the rooms were equipped with hidden peepholes, gas lines, padding, secret passages, ladders, and hallways that led to nowhere, and a chute that went down to the basement. In the basement, he had a surgical table and one of those medieval tables, the kind that stretch out the bodies, and he had a furnace. They have no idea how many people were actually killed at the castle, but he was convicted of 4 murders. He confessed to at least 27 different murders before they hung him in 1896. He could have killed hundreds of people. I mean, thousands of people. Because Chicago World's Fair was being held around the time that he was killing all these people, so I mean, he could have killed tons. Number 2, Donald Henry Gaskins, aka the Hitchhiker's Killer. In 1969, he started picking up hitchhikers down the coastal highways in the southern states. While he was on death row, he claimed to kill 100 to 110 different people. He was arrested after a criminal associate of his turned him in for seeing 2 people that had gone missing. But the most interesting part of this story is while Gaskins was on death row, he killed another inmate by the name of Rudolph Tyner. He was in prison for killing an elderly couple. So, Gaskins was hired by the son of that couple to kill him. Gaskins tried several different ways to kill Tyner, but one of the ways was poisoning, at which he was unsuccessful. But how he was successful is he made a bomb, which I think is pretty impressive because he was on death row and he makes a bomb. So he took a radio device and then gave it to somehow, because the details weren't exactly clear, he got this radio device to Tyner, and he told him that it was going to be a way for the 2 of them to be able to communicate. As he put the speaker to his ear, Gaskins detonated the device. The last thing Tyner heard was the sound of Gaskins laughing. Number 3, Tommy Lynn Sells, the brutal Texan. Sells killed people from 1985 to 1999. He murdered at least 22 people. The interesting part is not how many he killed or how he killed them, but it was how he got caught that caught my eye. Sells broke into the bedroom of a 10-year-old girl, stabbing her and slitting her throat and leaving her for dead after killing her 13-year-old friend. But she lived, and she described him in such detail that he got caught through being recognized in his sketch. They say that you can't always trust our memories, but that girl nailed it. Number 4, John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown. He was charged with committing 33 murders of young boys and young men. He would rape, torture, and murder all but one of his victims. He buried 26 bodies in the crawl space of his own home. The other bodies he dumped in the Des Plaines River. He was well known in his community for doing fundraiser events and child parties dressed up like Pogo or Patches the Clown. He ended up confessing to everything, and they ended up going hunting for all the bodies. He died by lethal injection in 1994. A little fact about me, I love Stephen King. That's how this guy ended up on my list, because he's the real life it. Like, a real life, he's a clown, he hunts little boys, he murders them, he eats them, he doesn't actually eat them. There's no proof of him eating them. It makes you wonder, can you see the deadlights in the crawl space of his house? Number 5, Gary Leon Ridgeway, aka the Green River Killer. The reason why I put this guy on my list is because I was born in Washington. I actually know people that knew him. I know people that know his family. I actually knew a lady that owned his TV. He was convicted of 49 murders of women and young girls. Some of them were prostitutes, some of them were runaways. He was the kind of killer that would return to the bodies and, you know, do adult naughty time with them. And that's how he got busted. That good old darn DNA. He confessed so he could get a plea deal of life imprisonment instead of lethal injection. Another fun fact, one of the bodies was actually dumped near Ellensburg, Washington. And at the time, my father was commuting up to Ellensburg for work. The cops noticed him going back and forth past where the dead body was found. And since my father, he was a strap-in, log-in kind of guy, which was the kind of guy that they were looking for, they brought him in for questioning because they thought he was trying to return to the scene of the crime. I mean, obviously my father didn't kill her, but somebody at some point thought he might have. Number 6, Luis Alfredo Garavito, aka La Beast. This man is something, some real nightmares. He was proven to have killed 138 children. He's suspected of killing closer to 400. He would capture, torture, and rape little boys from ages to 8 to 16. His sentence total was 1,853 years and 9 days. But Colombian law states that the maximum penalty is 40 years. And adding in, after they proved it was him because he has a rare eye condition that he has to have special glasses, and they found that exact prescription at one of the mass burials, and they found his DNA on bodies as well as underwear he left in the mass gravesite, he made a deal that would cut his sentence down to 22 years if he gave them more bodies. He's scheduled to be released in 2021. The other thing is, according to Colombian law, if it's a child crime, like if the crime involves a child, the maximum sentence is up to 60 years. And they don't make plea deals with people that mess with kids. So his deal of the 22 years is null and void according to their own laws. So I guess we'll see in 2021 if he's set free. Number 7, Robert Hanssen, aka the Butcher Baker. In 1971 to 1983, he abducted and raped at least 17 women. This guy is a crazy story. So he would actually abduct these women and put them on his private plane and fly them out to a remote location and then set them free. And then he would hunt them down. He got caught because one of the girls that he had abducted, he left her in the car while he was putting everything on the plane. And she escaped with still being bound. She took her shoes off in the car to prove that she was indeed in his car, and she ran into town. He was convicted of 461 years and a life sentence with no possible parole. This is the kind of stuff that we've actually seen in horror movies, and these 17 women went through this. I can't imagine what it would be like to be kidnapped, abducted, tortured for a while, put on a plane, and then tossed into the woods and hunted down. I like to think that I would have my head about me, but since he would hold them prisoner for a while, it would really shake their mind. So you're going in with not even a clear head. So even having some knowledge of surviving in the woods wouldn't necessarily help you, depending on the kind of torturing that he had done to you prior to. My heart really goes out to those girls. Number 8, Dennis Andrew Nielsen, aka the Muswell Hill Murderer. He was a Scottish serial killer that did most of his killings in London back in 1978 to 1983. The guy would kill his victims by drowning or strangling them, and then he would bathe their bodies and just hang out with them in his apartment for weeks or months. He played dress up with them. He admitted to doing some self-love while looking at the bodies, but he never put it in. Says he. He's still known as a necrophile. So to get rid of the bodies, he would cut them up into pieces. He would take the organs and just kind of put them in the trash, and then he would take the bigger pieces of the body and he would burn them in a bonfire. But the littler bones he would just flush down the toilet like a dead goldfish. There have been bodies flushed down the toilet in London. Mind blown. What? Human bodies in the toilet. Number 9, job at a quibble. I don't want to focus so much on the crimes he committed, but I want to focus on his actual sentence. He was found guilty of killing 100 homeless children that he also raped. So his sentence was to be strangled 100 times, then chopped up into 100 pieces, and then to be put in acid for the victims' families to watch. Dude, Pakistani judges are brutal. Wow. But according to Sharia law, executions are supposed to be done privately. They're not a public affair. But before any of that could happen, he was found hung in his cell on October 8th, 2001, which just so happened to be his birthday. Number 10, Joseph James DAngelo, aka the Golden State Killer. This is another interesting case, not because of what he did, but how he got caught. I'm sure you're all familiar with the story, but just don't necessarily know his name. In 1974 to 1986, he was a serial rapist killer with 13 murders, over 50 rapes, and well over 100 burglaries under his belt. But before they tied all that together, he was known as the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker. In 2001, DNA proved that those two people were the same person. It's then he became the Golden State Killer. That DNA was ran through every one of California's databases of DNA, and they kind of came up short. So they ran it through one of those ancestry sites and got a hit on a distant relative, which they traced down to be a 72-year-old Navy veteran, a former police officer, Joseph James DAngelo. Although statute of limitations didn't allow them to prosecute him for all of the rapes and all the burglaries, he did get prosecuted for the 13 murders. Last one on my list, number 11, Dr. Harold Shipman, aka Dr. Death. There is proof of him killing 218 people, but do we really know? He was a family man, and instead of getting a little something on the side, he was taking some lives on the side. In 1972 is when it all started, but it took 2 years of investigating to finally be able to peg him for it, because it was really hard to prove. I honestly thought when I heard this story the first time that he was a good doctor that didn't like seeing his patients in pain, because a lot of his patients were the elderly, and so he was kind of helping them along to the other side. But that may or may not be the case. Yes, most of his victims were the elderly, but he was also made the beneficiary on some of their wills, and you could just simply write that off, that he was getting paid to kill them. You know, like that was their way of giving him some gratitude. Or was he just, scamming some people? Was he stealing it, or was it being given? That's my dilemma here. We know that he was made the beneficiary, but we don't know really why, because they're dead. So really what I want to know is, which direction does your moral compass point? Is it okay for assisted suicide, as it's actually called, or not? I mean, if somebody is suffering from a severe illness and there's no way out of this, they're going to die a really horrible, painful death, is it okay for people to search out doctors that will help them? Or do you think that murder is murder no matter what, and that's not okay? I really just want you to take a second and think. What would you do if you were sick like that? Don't put it down in the comments, because I don't want that conversation, but I do want the conversation of which way your moral compass is pointed, to whether it's okay or it's not okay. Let's not get too personal down there. Well, guys, I think we better wrap this up before serial killers really start serial killing in my dreams. If you guys have some serial killers that you found interesting but I didn't put on this list, go ahead and leave their names down below so we can look them up together. Or if you guys have a story like I did with my father and my friends that knew the Green River Killer, go ahead and leave those stories down below too, because I find that stuff way more fascinating than the stuff you can just Google and find out on the internet. And if you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more Disney content, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. If you want to see my actual dog instead of just her rump, follow us on Instagram at This Is Having a Bad Day. Thanks for watching. The rump is on fire. We don't need no water, let the mother rumpin' burn. Burn, mother rumpin', burn. I don't know where you get this idea that what I stick in my mouth should go in your mouth. Yeah, this is the TARDIS. You gotta take care of the TARDIS. Crunch, 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 crunch. Why do you hang out with me? Because you have no choice. There was no part of the body. What are you talking about? It's two clowns at once, guys. I mean, you can murder the same person multiple times. He even confessed to... with himself. Months, guys. Months. I said months. He would hang out with some dead bodies in his apartment for months. Gross!